Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're listening to from in the world. This is Jake Claver with my partner in crime, Byron Wolf, on the Future of Fortunes podcast. How are you, Byron?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So we did not get a chance to record yesterday. We had some technical difficulties, listeners, and I am so happy that we did not, because what a shitstorm we have had in the last 24 hours with the SVB and Circle USDC. I am stoked. This is going to be a great episode. So thank God, we had technical difficulties yesterday, because this is going to be a good one, guys. I can't wait.
Yeah, let's get into it, man. So, for those that don't know, and we'll probably put this out, pretty quickly, just so that we can get some traction with it and you guys can understand what's going on. But SVB was the 16th largest bank in the world, or not in the world, I'm sorry, in the US. And they failed yesterday evening on a Friday. And the weird thing with them, and so FDIC insures up to $250 on bank accounts, right?
250K. Yeah.
They 97% of their bank accounts are over that amount because they are the primary fiduciary that most people in Silicon Valley use. And so Byron and I were just getting into that prior to this conversation we got on here, but he was also telling me that there's a lot of medical companies that go into that for us.
So a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the big medical companies, like medical research, a lot of the big government funds that go into research and development for new medical processes, new medical drugs, things of that nature, are also in with SVB. So the fact that all of the tech, which again, tech has kind of gone down a little bit, but I don't want to say all, but a big chunk of all the tech. And then all of our medical research is not all, but a big chunk of it controlled by SVB or funded by SVB, with a lot of the capital raises, things of that nature. And so, like, I don't want to say like too big to fail, but I mean, we've seen that before with banks, too big to fail, and the government won't let them. And so as soon as I saw this, I was like, there's no way, like, this is not going to happen. So let's just talk about kind of what occurred with SVB. They had a bunch of unrealized losses in bonds. They had put out bonds at a rate that was around 1.5 to 1.8, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact number, but less than 2%, right? Now those T bonds, I mean, they're at 3% and above, like I think 3.3 right now. So obviously unrealized gains there. That's a major issue. You got to take those at some point, but that reduces your valuation. So then they have the and the timeline on this. I'm going the timeline, and then I'll give you the media timeline. So then they had a run somewhat on the banks because of that. And media-wise, that was the last thing. But actually, that was the second thing in the true timeline. So they had this run on the banks. A lot of people came in. There was some freaking out. Hey, man, get your money out, get your money out. And so that was an issue. SVB, they had to sell off some of those. And so they did, they had the customer withdrawals. They sold some securities at a loss. And then SVB immediately put out essentially like a raise. So they went to sell some of their stock. I think it was about 3 billion's worth. It was pretty close to how much Circle actually had an SVB, which is weird, like, conspiracy. But about 3 billion that they wanted to sell to booster their balance sheet. So those four things, those are the four big reasons SVB kind of fell. According to the media, it was a classic run on the bank. And they don't really talk about those other three things, but that's what created this. And so the result was FDIC stepped in and basically took over the bank, put it into receivership. If you don't know what receivership is a court ordered, basically taking over control of whatever that is. It can be, it can even be a person. You can put somebody in a state, a trust, a business, a bank, you name it. It's not very specific to the banking industry, but in this case, specific to SVB. Put them in the receivership where they take over full control of the bank, secure the assets to either restructure or to make sure that the people that are invested get the majority of their money back. So that occurred, went into receivership, and now there's banks scrambling for SVB Jake and I were just talking about this. Here's the crazy thing: about 45 minutes ago, FDIC announced on a Saturday, like, obviously this is big news. This is a Saturday. We all know government doesn't work on the weekend.
Nope.
But on a weekend, FDIC comes out and says, hey, we're going to reimburse 95% of uninsured funds to the acquiring bank, and we're going to give you half of that next week. So literally, there's a 5% loss on uninsured. I'm not talking about insured, FDIC insured, a 5% loss on the uninsured that right now, if you go and look at it, go media, Chicken Little Media tells you all the uninsured is just gone. It's you're never going to get it back, blah, blah, blah. FDIC said, hey, 95% of that, and we're going to give you half of that next week. No details on when you're going to get the other half, but like if they've said they're going to get it, it's the FDIC. It's going to happen. So I feel like there's going to be a run of banks that are like, hey, man, I'll pick up SVB, 95% of uninsured, 100% of insured. I'm going to get half that money next year, basically guaranteed by the government. I mean, that's a win. Like, if you could buy something at a yard sale and get 95% of retail back on that, like, that's a win. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're, when I talked about the 97% earlier, their exposure on that side is $170 billion that's above the insured amount in those accounts. So that's a lot of money. Like, if you're going to give me, what's half of that next week? $85 billion.
$85 billion. Yes. Yeah. I mean, in total assets, SVB had 200 something billion. I don't know. It's low 200, call it 200, 210, something like that. 210. So what you're talking about is just the uninsured. So that shows you how much was in this uninsured above the 250,000 per account FDIC coverage, the insured, so to speak. That's a lot of money, guys. And as Jake said earlier, the majority of that is uninsured. Like, it's above the $250,000 cap. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to get that back, you're guaranteed. Plus they have not all publicity is bad. Even bad publicity can be good publicity. Everybody knows what SVB is. So if a bank comes in, steps in, takes over this, like, that's a lot of good exposure. You're getting some free media just from the negativity, and you get to step in and be a hero at a 95% recovery rate on the uninsured, 100% on the insured. That's a win for anybody. Yeah.
Well, and people think, like, so even to the average person, 170 billion sounds like a lot of money. Okay. But for these fiduciaries and these other banks, they play with trillions. Okay. Yeah. So they should easily be able to step in and acquire this bank, even if it was at 95% of the valuation, which it's not going to be because they're insolvent. Right. And to your point with their exposures, so they basically got fleeced. Thiel came in, Peter Thiel, and he withdrew, I don't remember if it was 24 or 42 billion from the bank. And when he did that, that's when everybody else freaked out and also started pulling their money. And so all these banks run on fractional reserve banking. Okay. And they when you put your money in the bank, it is a loan to the bank that you're making, and they're paying you 0% interest if it's a checking account, or if it's a savings account, you're getting like 0.1% interest. Maybe some of them are getting 1 or 2 right now. But it's a loan to the bank that you're making to them, and then they'll give it back to you. They're a fiduciary, they're supposed to. But you're a creditor to the bank. And this was a point that was made to me earlier today that I didn't know the sequence of events that played out, but derivatives are first course, or who gets paid first when a bank collapse happens. And then below derivatives is expenses and pieces of the bank, the employees, all that stuff. And then it's the creditors of the bank that get paid, and then stockholders are beneath them. So if you did have, these banks have failed in the past, and it doesn't sound like this one's going to end up being that bad. I think we're going to be able to recover from it. And the FDIC is going to, do their duty and what they're supposed to do and help in this situation. But say they did fail, the stockholders get the bad end of the stick first, and then the creditors, which would be you and your bank account, which is the bail-in deal. And then they'll give you, in other countries when this has happened, they've issued stock from the bankrupt bank to their creditors as an equivalent value. So it's not a good deal. So if this were to go south and be worse, I have seen some other things say that other banks had exposure to some of the things that they're involved in, and that's really the systemic risk here.
Those are the smaller banks, though. These are much smaller banks that are under the SVB, not your big ones. There's a run on Bank of America, Wachovia. I think Chase had a small run. Guys, these aren't connected. When Jake's talking about other banks, we're talking about much smaller banks that are under SVB, like not your big boys. So don't go. I mean, pull all your money if you want to.
We're not inciting bank runs. I'll just go ahead and throw the disclaimer in here because we always come to it, right? This is never financial advice. Byron and I are giving you information for entertainment and educational purposes only. Always consult with your financial advisor, wealth manager, attorney, or CPA before making any financial, legal, or tax decisions. So there's your disclaimer. But yeah, I'm hopeful that it ends up turning out better than the media is portraying it, right? Then the reason this pertains to crypto is Circle has the majority of, I say the majority, 25% of their reserves are in this bank, right? And so we saw Circle, who has their stablecoin USDC depeg yesterday, dropped from $1 all the way down to 88 cents, but since has recovered all the way back to $1 at this point. And so that shows that, things are probably going to work out. What do you think?
No, 100%. I mean, the fact that it bounced back so quickly, my big regret and all that is I didn't have some buys in place below, say 95. Like if you were one of the crazy ones that were in there, maybe you had some kind of system or AI that bought in at the 88 cents. I mean, heck, that's a
12% yield on your money in less than 24 hours, in one of the safest ways you could do it, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, great deal there. But the fact that it's already back to $1 just tells you, it's back where it needs to be. And like you said, with Circle, 3 billion, 3.3 billion, I think, that was in SVB, USDC was a little bit at risk, but again, like you have to have some diversity in there. If you talk to any financial advisor, anybody that's in that space, they're going to tell you, hey, you got to diversify your money. You got to have, your stuff kind of put into multiple arenas. And that's what Circle did, so they had I think it's 3.3 billion. Don't quote me on that. It's 3+ billion.
It was 3.3. They like that number 33 for whatever reason.
Yeah, they did. But yeah, I mean, they had it in there, and so that has to be protected. So there's just all these things, like there's so many ties to SVB. I just don't see this. I got texts. I know, Jake, you got some too, guys just kind of freaking out. Oh man, sky's falling, get out. And now I'm looking at the markets and there's a 4 or 5, at least 3 to 5% increase in your top 10 cryptos since this occurred. Because Jake, you said it, earlier, right before we hopped on this thing, everybody got out of whatever was at risk, whatever was the sky was falling, and they got into something else. So we've seen an increase in a majority of these cryptos that everybody to want to get out of. So it does lead us into our second point in this. I do want to talk about this. So I've seen some posts, Jake. I know you've seen them too. We've had some people reach out to us, hey man, should I sell all my crypto? Like, is it safe? Whatever. So I do want to talk about the structure of that. So where you keep your crypto is important. Jake and I, we preach all the time, put it in cold storage, get it on something, Ledger, whatever. Don't let the exchange hold your crypto, because technically you own it, but you don't really own it. So
it's owed back to you. It's the same thing as a bank. Like I just said, you lent it to the bank when you put it in the bank account, and they owe it back to you with some interest, hopefully, but sometimes not even with interest. You should definitely be holding your crypto on some type of cold wallet. I did meet with PolySign a couple weeks ago, and in that interaction, if you are accredited, you can hold it with them, and they hold it in a pretty unique format for a cold wallet, where the keys are sharded and only brought together when you provide triple factor authentication using a YubiKey, a password, and a biometric. So super secure there, but only for accredited investors. And then everybody else, if you're just average retail guy and you got some crypto on the side, you definitely want to keep it in a Trezor or a decent wallet. It could be a Ledger Nano. I use for XRP. There's a lot of different options for people.
Yeah, and so let's get into that. Let's break that down for people who don't really understand what that is. So there's a number of ways to hold it. There's on the exchange. So I'm going to call that an exchange wallet because you log into your exchange, it's there, it shows you what you have, but you don't really own that. I mean, the argument is that you do. You don't really. It's kind of like owning gold on a paper exchange. You've got a certificate that says you own it, but it ain't in your safe. So you got your exchange wallet. And then there's software wallets as well, which are essentially like an app on your phone, app on your laptop that shows you what you have. Safer than an exchange wallet, but not the safest, because generally it's just a password, and people can get into that pretty easily. There's paper wallets, which is essentially the same format. It's owned, but you've written down your password, your complicated 16-word phrase. And you have, yeah, if you lose that, you're just kind of out, which is kind of a bad option. And then you have your cold, which, Jake was just saying, like I love Ledger. It's good, but there's a bunch of them that are out there. And so that's going to look like a little USB stick. It can take a number of forms, but it's something that you literally unplug from your computer, and you can throw it in your safe, in a drawer, or whatever. It's still backed by a password, still backed by a code phrase, all those things. But it's really two-factor,
authentication. Yeah, you have to have a physical item in order to access the wallet. So you'll have a password still of some kind that you put into that physical device, and you have to have that specific physical device. And you do have the ability to recover that wallet or those assets with the seed phrase or the key phrase that you wrote down on the piece of paper. But it makes it easy access, and anybody else that tries to get it, don't ever give your seed phrase or your key phrase that you write down on the piece of paper to anybody else. When you do set up a wallet, always write it down. Do not keep it on your computer or on your phone or anywhere that somebody could hack you in some way and obtain that information, because if they obtain that information, they can recreate your wallet and steal your assets. And you get a lot of people that get phishing emails where somebody will say they're from Ledger, or they'll say they're from Coinbase or whatever fiduciary or exchange. And they'll say, hey, we need your seed phrase or your key phrase so that we can unlock your account, or a bunch of other crazy things. Do not ever send your seed phrase to anyone ever on an email or anything else. Like, the only time that they should be able to see it is in person on that piece of paper. And they do have people now that actually make a metal deal where they'll transcribe your seed. You're able to stamp your seed phrase on there with the letters, so that, paper goes away after time. But if you had a piece of steel or metal that had it stamped into it, it's a little more durable. I don't go that far. I've just got multiple copies, right? So 3 or 4 copies of each one of my wallet seed phrases put in different places. They're not all at my house. So if my house burns down, even if my safe got jacked, I've got another resource somewhere that I can get to, and I can recover it myself and make sure that, somebody else doesn't get it. So there's a lot that goes into this with self-custody, that keeps a lot of people out. But yeah, if you're going to get into it, and especially if you're going to, put more than a couple grand in it, I would suggest that you definitely become knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah. And don't screenshot it. I see that a lot. People screenshot their seed phrase. It's stored on their phone. They make themselves a note. I've heard multiple times they're like, oh, I just emailed it to myself so I'd have access to it. Your email is literally probably the easiest thing to get into for anybody. So if you've emailed your seed phrase at any point, you've screenshotted it and it's in your phone under important, or something crazy like that in your photos, you need a new seed phrase. Like, don't be that guy. It's not going to work for you. But this is what you need to do. This is how you protect yourself. SVB, I'm not going to say that it's all going to work out, but I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I feel very strongly that this is going to fix itself. It's going to be just fine. We're going to roll right through this. There's going to be a new SVB that's going to step up, handle this. We can't end tech. Like, tech's always going to exist. We can't end medical research. That's always going to be an issue. That's always going to be something that we're going to be working on. I just don't see the government allowing this to fail. The fact that the FDIC stepped in so fast. I mean, this is probably the fastest in receivership process I've ever seen in my life. I'm 44 years old. I'm not going to say I've seen it all, but I I bet there's not a whole lot of in receiverships that have occurred that quickly. This was 48 hours. I think we're less than 48 hours into this thing. And it's pretty much taken care of. Like we have a path forward. We see kind of the end of the road here. And I feel like a lot of people are going to come out just fine. Those that made a run on the bank and you got your money out, congratulations, like good job. Those that didn't get their money out, and are freaking out right now, I'm not going to tell you not to freak out, but I think you're going to be okay. I think we're going to come out. You may have a little bit of a loss on this. Maybe next time you'll, do multiple accounts, guys. It's $250K per account. It's not $250K per person. It's not 250, like it's per account. Like get multiple accounts. This is not complicated. Like,
just reduce your risk, like you talked about before. Yeah. So Circle only had 25% of their backing at this bank. They bank with other banks so that if something like this were to occur, your eggs aren't all in one basket. You just want to diversify risk in any way that you can, especially if you have significant amounts of money. So same thing with the crypto. Like I've got 12 cold wallets. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't keep more than a certain amount of money in each one because if somebody did somehow get my seed phrase and hack into it, I'm not out everything I've got. And I know that's, potentially expensive to do if you're buying $100 Ledger Nano every single time, it could be $1,200. But at the same time, depending on how much money you have in the investments, I mean, if you were paying another fiduciary to handle your investments and wealth management, you're going to be paying them $1,200 a year, right? And you have less control over it. So, just be careful out there and make sure that you're mitigating whatever risks there are for whatever investments you're doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with that. And if anybody wants to find my seed phrase, I keep copies of those in all of my enemies' homes. So if you'd like to break in and destroy those homes in search of my phrase, feel free. That's where they're stored. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm like Jake. I have it in multiple places. Guys, just be smart. Like, I mean, just use common sense here. Like having it in the cold. They're called hardware, cold storage. There's a number of names for them, but all the same thing. Basically offline storage. I think I've heard that before too. Put it there. I love what Jake said. Do multiple, like, as your assets grow, like you would give up a certain amount to have confidence in it, right? So, if you're going to store $100, it doesn't make sense to buy $100 Nano on it, right? But if you're going to store 100K, I would gladly spend a couple $100 to have that diversified. And so if somebody were to hack one, if you were silly enough to copy it and email it or take a screenshot or,
not out everything you got. I do want to say too, if you want to quantum proof your wallets, because that is a concern, probably 3, 4, 5 years from now, there'll be quantum computers. And that's the other reason PolySign will become prominent. Like they can control 5,000 and 6,000 deep seed phrases. Like that's how many words are involved so that a quantum computer can't hack them. You're not going to want to write all that down and remember everything and all that stuff. So they'll become very needed. But in the meantime, you definitely want to have multiple wallets. And if you want it to be quantum proof, you're going to send the transaction there and you're not going to do anything with it. So you're going to send it to the wallet one time. That's it. Don't send it out of the wallet, because as soon as you send it out of the wallet, there's an in and an out, and a quantum computer can start to break through that. I'm not sure the full technicals on it because I'm not the tech guy. I mean, I seem techie, quote unquote, but I'm more the financial guy and I understand the capabilities of Web3. But I can just tell you the people that are smarter than me, they're tech guys. They say send one transaction to the wallet and you're quantum proof. It can't hack that wallet. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I mean, the safer you can be, the better off you are. And as you increase your crypto holdings, you need to take in the increased risk. Guys, crypto, is getting mainline, which unfortunately means there's going to be more and more people in this space trying to get that money from you. There's 100%. Scammers be scamming. So just be ready for it and protect yourself as best you can. Guys, thanks for joining us. This was great. This is great information. Stay on your toes. Hopefully everything works out. I think that probably our next one, we'll talk about how SVB came out of this thing. We're going to try to get this one out as fast as we can. We're going to put this one out faster than we normally do. So hopefully this information is fairly recent to you. If you're listening to this months and months later, you can talk about how amazingly brilliant we were that we saw all this stuff coming in the moment. But thanks for joining us, Jake. I'll let you close this out.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys for joining us as always, like Byron said. And hopefully this information was valuable for you. If you do want to go check out futureoffortunes.com, you can find us there, or as well as on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you can also find us on Digital Ascension Group as the YouTube channel. And we'll see y'all on the next one.
Thanks, guys.